Hello! I've been teaching myself how to nalbind without looking at what I'm doing, and I thought I would share some of the tips and tricks that I've found throughout this experience. I will try to explain as I'm going with words so that if you can't see very well, you can still follow, but if there's something that you're confused about or anything, just comment down below and I will see it and I can answer. So we start with a length of thread that's, I don't know, an arm's length. So like when you stretch your hands out from one hand to another, and you will thread your needle at one end and then the other one goes in your left hand. So you're holding your needle in your right hand, and the end of the thread that's on the opposite end of the thread that's not through the needle is in your left hand. So take that end that's in your left hand, lay it in your left hand like, I guess, an upside down U, with the short, like the actual end of the thread, quite short, so like 10 centimeters of that down one side, and then up to the top of the hand, and then the rest of the long thread down the other end. Take the top, like where the top of the U is, so like this is sort of a half loop. Take the top of the loop and bend it downwards. You may need to help with other fingers. What you want to end up with is the short end lying up and then creating sort of a loop on the left side, a loop on the right side, and then the long thread going down. So the loop gets folded on top of the other two, like the two threads. Then you hold these two loops, the point where all the threads connect, you hold that between your thumb and index finger, and you take your needle in your right hand and stick it from sort of you and away from you through the first loop, then twist it and stick it towards you through the second loop. Now you can feel that it's on your needle, and you can pull the two bottom strands to tighten it a little. Not too much, just a little. Now you take your left thumb and you feel for the two threads, the short one and the long one, and you put your thumb over the short one and under the long one, and then grip the two loops between your thumb and your index finger. Now pull the needle a little bit out and angle it so it gets under the thread. Use your, like the long thread that's connected to the needle. Use your right hand to guide and to make sure that this thread is under the needle tip, and then push the needle through and draw the yarn through towards you. And when you can't go anymore, start twisting this around your, well, I'm doing thumb and second finger. Something else may be useful for you. It's just a way of winding up the thread so you don't lose where it is. When you've tightened basically all the way you can go, make sure, like, feel your thumb and make sure that the loop you just tightened is around your thumb. And now you have the start, the beginning. So you can feel, now you can let go of the thread you've pulled through and wound up around your fingers. And you can use your right hand to feel that there are 2 loops behind your thumb and one across the base, like the base of your fingernail. Now take your needle and stick it through first one loop. Use your fingers to feel where they are, and then the next loop. Use your fingers as much as you might need. Now you have 2 loops on your needle. Twist the needle against your thumb so it like hits the pad of your thumb on the left edge, and then like push it downwards to get under the 2 threads. So that's the loop on your thumb and the working thread. You can have a feel for how you're doing by feeling at the back of your thumb that the needle is actually behind all the threads that it should be. Push it halfway through, then take the loop that's on your thumb and pull it off your thumb. Then push the needle through the rest of the way. And again, use your fingers to ravel up, to have control of your threads. So I just use my second finger and my thumb to swivel around and catch all the thread that's going through as I'm pulling through. Then you can let go of it, and we're going to do the same again. So now feel for where the loop is behind the thumb. That's the loop we just took off the thumb. And then use your second finger on your left hand or other fingers to find the rightmost loop behind your thumb. So that's the loop so there's 3 loops behind your thumb now. So the first one is the one we just took off the thumb, and then there are 2 more, and you want the rightmost of those. Then we twist the needle against the pad of your thumb, and so to get under the 2 threads, the loop currently on your thumb and the working thread. Use your index finger both to check that there are the appropriate amount of loops on your thumb and on your needle, and to support your needle as it goes through. And again, as we've come halfway through, we will pick the loop off the thumb and push the rest of the way and make sure. I sometimes, when I'm doing this, pull almost all of it through and then feel, is the loop going to hit the base of my thumb fingernail? This time it did, so it helps to pull towards you. And you can let go of all the thread you've bundled up and do it again. So feel for the first loop, put your needle through it, and then use the other fingers to find the next loop. Sometimes you can also just stab in the blind with your needle until you find the loop that's the rightmost loop. Then twist the needle against the pad of your thumb and under the 2 threads, the loop and the working thread. Push it halfway through. Use your right hand to flip the thread off your thumb, and then pull the needle through the rest of the way. and wind up the thread. So again, that one loop, then feel for the next loop. Against the pad of the thumb, under, off with the loop around your thumb, and then the rest of the way through. And wind up the thread. The reason we're winding up the thread is that if you don't, it gets very fumbly to find the thread again to pull more times. So by winding it up, you never lose the thread, and your hands are all very close together all the time. So we are going to do that again for quite a while, and you'll have to just, so first feel for the first loop. You can find it with your right hand, and then you can find the second loop with your right hand as well if you want to. And then run your needle against the pad of your thumb until you're under the threads. Halfway through, then pop the loop off your thumb and push the needle the rest of the way through. Wind up the thread as you're pulling it through, and make sure that the thread makes a loop around your thumb. Sometimes I change my grip at the end of pulling the working thread through, so that my index finger lays over the tip of my thumb. That prevents the loop from missing the thumb and going to the back of the work, which creates a knot. So that can be useful if that happens a lot to you. Again, with finding one loop, finding a second loop, 2 loops on the needle, push it against the pad of my thumb on the left hand side under the 2 strands. Halfway through, push the loop on the thumb off and push the needle through the rest of the way and wind up the thread. And again, 1 loop, second loop, push it under, flip the loop on the thumb off and push it through and wind up the thread. One loop, 2 loops, under the threads, halfway through, loop on the thumb off, and the rest of the way through, and wind up the thread. Here I have caught the end of the starting thread, and I just have to feel the beginning. I could feel that there was something weird when my thread went through. I can feel by the, like on the left hand side of my thumb, that there's 2 threads. I will feel the end of my work and feel that, oh, there is no hanging thread here. Find it and pull it back out. I also felt that the tail from my needle was getting in the way, and so I will make that tail shorter. By pulling some thread through the eye of the needle. And we can go again. 1 loop, 2 loops. I twist my hand, my left hand, to make the loop catching easier. And then I can twist it again, so it's a sort of, as the needle goes against the pad of my thumb, I'm twisting both hands towards me, I guess. And so the needle goes under both threads, and it's halfway through. I flip the loop off my thumb and support with my index finger as I push the needle through the rest of the way. And I wind up the thread. So then again, a tip for picking up the first loop is to lay the needle on the sort of top of the pad of your thumb, and then just let it glide away from you. That is a very good way to find the first loop. And then the second one is sort of, I generally just stab in the air in the approximate right place, as in a little bit down and away from me, and I will generally find it. Then twist the needle back underneath the two threads, flip the loop off the thumb and push it all the way through and wind up the thread. One loop, two loops, twist underneath the two threads, halfway through, flip the loop off my thumb, push the needle the rest of the way, and wind up the thread. Now you can take the end of your work, so find the end that has the loose thread, short thread hanging off, and pull it to make it have the shape that it will eventually have. I think I am going to work this as long as I wanted to start a pouch. So that means just continuing on the path we've set, and then I will be back with how I connect to the previous row. Now I have made this about the length of a slightly splayed hand from pinky to finger to thumb. That's the width I like for my pouches. And now comes sort of the most difficult part of making a pouch, which is turning the first turn, if that makes sense. So we're starting from the bottom and working our way up. So this will be, this length that we've made, it will be the bottom of the pouch. The first thing we need to do is figure out where our thumb goes. And so we find the working end, which is the end that has the needle connected to it. And when it's lying flat, there should be a last, let's see. First, we find the working end. We figure out that the working thread is coming sort of above the last couple of loops, which means that we are on the right side. And then we pick up the last loop and slip our thumb through that. Now when we're going to turn, we need to look for an edge loop below our thumb, so like slightly behind. So feel below, like on the length that we've made now, feel on the sort of rightmost, the right of your thumb, and follow the work down from there. Pick the second loop, I would say, so not the first one, which belongs to the previous stitch, but let's see. What have I been doing? I've been doing the third loop, I think. Yes, the third loop. So we find the loop that is our thumb is through, and then the first loop we feel against the edge, 1 edge loop, 2 edge loop, 3 edge loops. Then, as we found out with our right hand, we transfer that edge loop to being held between the index and thumb of our left hand. Our right hand with the needle is now free to go through that loop by feeling against the thumb and forefinger. So now we have the loop that we want to go through. Now we need to do the stitch as normal. So we have to find the 2 loops behind our thumb, which can be a bit difficult this time, but use the pad of your thumb as a guide, and then feel with your right index finger that you have the right amount of loops. Then push it against the pad of your thumb under the 2 threads. Halfway through, flip the loop off your thumb, support with your index finger, and push the needle through the rest of the way. And wind up the thread. I just adjusted the tail of my yarn again. Now we have turned. Now finding the next edge loop to use is a matter of putting your index finger against the right side of your thumb, following that down, and you find the edge loop that was used in the previous. So you follow that sort of away from you and find the edge loop that was used in the previous stitch, and then you follow that edge loop down and you will find the next unused one. Transfer, so you found that with your right index finger and thumb, transfer that to your left index finger and thumb and stick your needle through it. Now you have the edge loop, and now we do the stitch. So find the first loop behind your thumb by following the pad of your thumb, and then the second loop can be found a little bit easier if you use the third finger on your left hand to guide you. So that can help you separate the 2 previous loops. Then twist your needle towards the pad of your thumb and follow it under the 2 threads, the loop on your thumb and the working thread. Halfway through, let go of the loop on your thumb and push the needle the rest of the way through and wind up the thread. And now we continue doing that. So index finger against the thumb, follow the previous thread that's sort of at an angle towards you to find the next unused loop. Put your needle through that, find the 2 loops behind your thumb with some help from the third finger on your left hand. Twist the needle against the pad of your thumb and under, halfway through, and flip the loop off your thumb and push through. Wind up the yarn as you pull the yarn through. And again, we put our index finger against our right index finger against our left thumb, follow the previous loop down towards us, so we find the next edge loop. Then we take our needle and then we transfer the loop to the left index finger and thumb, take our needle and push it through that, and then do the stitch by finding 1 and then 2 loops and pushing it under and halfway through, flipping the loop off our thumb, pushing it the rest of the way through, and winding up the thread. And again, putting our index finger at on the right side of our left thumb, following the previously used edge loop down to the next unused edge loop, transferring it to the left hand, pushing the needle through it, and then doing the stitch by finding 1 and 2 loops and pushing it under, flipping the loop off my thumb and pushing it all the way through while winding up the thread. One more time, and then I think you can go back to see more if you want to. So put your index finger on the left hand, the right index finger on the right side of your left thumb, follow the previous loop down, or like at an angle towards you, to find the next edge loop, transfer it to the index finger and thumb of your left hand, put the needle through it, then pick up 1 and 2 loops behind the thumb, push the needle towards your the pad of your thumb underneath the 2 strands of the working thread and the loop around your thumb, then flip the loop around your thumb off your thumb and push the needle all the way through while winding the thread. So what I've taught you now is the Korgen stitch. It is a close relative of a Mammen, but for Mammen you will pick up 2 loops from the previous row. I can quickly describe how you would do that. So for 2 loops from the previous row, you still follow, you put your right index finger against your left thumb and follow the previously used loop down towards the newest unused. You still pick that up and put the needle through it, but then you need to go through the loop you just followed. So my way of doing this is to hold a little bit harder with my index finger and left finger, like a bit down that thread, and twist the needle towards your thumb to pick up that second loop, and then do the stitch as described before. So it is a matter of like learning how to do nalbinding without looking at it is mostly a matter of managing to be as tactile as possible with it, while being able to, especially if you've seen this and you've worked nalbinding while seeing before, to create a sort of mental image of what it is you're doing. That has helped me, at least. The key is to let your fingers be your eyes. And I was very much like, a lot of my frustration came from losing my thread as I pulled it through. Because when I look at what I'm doing, I will pull through a long length by stretching my arm backwards, and then let go of the thread I've been pulling, and then take it closer to my hand and pull again. But when I couldn't see it, I would be fumbling for that second one. So winding up the thread as you pull it through is definitely a good way to go. That way you have control. And also, it is a great thing to do when you're on public transport and you don't want to stab anyone, because it means your hands will always be in your lap when you're working. Otherwise, I think the main thing that sort of solved it for me was figuring out how to find the next loop, the next edge loop, which I think I found a pretty good strategy for finding. So the putting your index finger against the right side of your thumb, and then like finding the next available loop. It's useful, and I don't want to just go stabbing in the blind with my needle and hope I find the right loop, because then I would be losing loops and the shape of whatever I'm making wouldn't be right. So using your fingers as that tactile, to be that tactile and find the next loop and hold it with your left hand is what I've found to be the best. Yeah. Let me know in the comments if you have any questions, or if there's anything that wasn't super clear to you. I may do a second video, or I may just try to answer your question in the comments in the comments section. Please excuse all all the things I said wrong. I tried as best I could, and that's all anyone can do. And with that, I will see you next time. Bye!